Week 5 recap. Let's get it.
Welcome to FaZe Fantasy Live with your host, Lonnie Z.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is FaZe Fantasy Live. I'm your host, Lonnie Z, and along with me is my guy, Jake Hansen. What's up, Jake? How are you, man?
What's going on, Lonnie? How's it going?
It's good, brother. It's good. So we're talking about all the games that happened yesterday. And yesterday, man, was it started off in London, Jaguars and Bills. Now, the Jaguars and Bills, we both had the Bills in this game. Turned out to be actually a pretty good game. Actually, I was up about 6:45 watching the game. I was kind of surprised. So I got to see the majority of the game, and then I started getting ready for the rest of the day towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
But the Jaguars got it done. Trevor Lawrence had a real good day, over 300 yards passing. Travis Etienne, big fantasy day, had 138, 136 yards, running. He looked good. Calvin Ridley got got in the game plan and had a good fantasy day too. And the Jaguars get out of London 1-1. They lost one, they win one. We thought that them staying there could be a big, difference. And I think it did play a role in this win. And I'm not too worried about the Bills on that loss. That was a tough game. These two teams always play each other tough. From a fantasy perspective, what'd you see with this game?
The Jaguars, them staying there showed, big. Trevor Lawrence had 20 fantasy points. Looked good. Looked really good. Travis Etienne Jr., 39 fantasy points. The best game he's had all year with 2 touchdowns. And like Lonnie said, Calvin Ridley, 23 points. Christian Kirk still had some. He had 14. Zay Jones, 11. And Ingram had a down game. But the Jaguars looked good. I think it was for them staying there in London helped out a lot. And the Bills didn't play too bad. Josh Allen, 31 fantasy points. James Cook had a really bad game, -4 yards. I don't know what happened there. The Jags haven't really looked too tough on the rushing defense. And Stephon Diggs, 28 fantasy points, and Gabe Davis, 25. He's starting to show up. We talked about him in the beginning of the year, and they're finally using Gabe a lot. Dalton Kincaid, I think he's going to be one of those guys. I think I said it last week. Show me. Next week, I wouldn't start him. Me, personally, I have him. I am going to look for somebody else. He's going to have to be wait-and-see guy right now. And he had 3 fantasy points. With the Bills, it just seems like there's some stuff going on in the locker room. Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, it just seems like their chemistry is not – I don't know. It just seems like something's going on. I know Diggs went off and Allen had a good game, but it just seems like something's there.
Yeah. Yeah. All in all, it was an entertaining game. I think that you can really count on the main players still going forward in fantasy. You can count on Diggs. I think this and Allen. Some of the surprise thing is, like you said, Gabe Davis. Like I had him on my bench. Gabe Davis is a guy that I think is going to be a solid number 2, number 3 fantasy wide receiver this year, based on what we've seen in this first 5 weeks. All right. And as far as for the Jaguar side, it was just good to see Ridley get back involved because we a lot of us drafted him real high. All right. So let's get on to the next game. It's the Vikings and the Chiefs. And 27-20. I thought that the Vikings would win this game. I had it, and we both went Vikings on this. And it was playing into what I thought could have happened. But some of the key things that happened, Justin Jefferson's hurt. Right now, we won't know. He's supposed to have some test
MRI.
done today, an MRI. It's his hamstring, they're saying. So we'll see what's going on with him. That's going to be huge if he misses any time for the Vikings, because down the stretch, they could have used him. Mahomes didn't have the greatest day, just like he just doesn't. He just gets enough done. Kelsey had got hurt, and we'll see if Kelsey can play. They have a quick turnaround. They played Thursday night. So, but he had 10 receptions. That's all Mahomes is going to is Travis Kelsey, man. That's all he has. And then, Kadarius Toney got involved in this one too. Alexander Madison got his first touchdown of the year. He still hasn't had a rushing touchdown this year. So, but he finally got in the end zone. And Jordan Addison had a big day for the Vikings, but Kirk Cousins, he did what he's supposed to do. No interceptions, no turnovers, but the Vikings once again had turnovers. From the fantasy side, how'd it look?
Yeah, not too big of a fantasy game for this two teams. Nothing really too crazy. Patrick Mahomes, 19 fantasy points. Pacheco, thought, he would have been a little better, but he had 13. Rashi Rice, 13 fantasy points. Tony Watson, 7 fantasy points each. And Travis Kelce, 22 fantasy points. He leads the game with 22 fantasy points. Addison had 18. Kirk Cousins had 19. Alexander Madison, rushing 26 rushing yards, 12 fantasy points. Nothing too crazy here, man. T.J. Hawkinson 10. Yeah, the game was just. I really thought the Vikings were going to get it. Like they were looking good. It was looking good, and then J.J. went out with that hamstring injury, and then I think they really would have. I think they would have tied that game if Jefferson was in, and the game wasn't really a too powerful game. It was really. I'm not saying boring, but it was just not a lot of action, not a lot of big points out there. Jefferson had 5 fantasy points before he got hurt, but yeah, that's it for that game.
Yeah, and moving forward, I don't think you can count on Alexander Madison, man.
No.
I think he's going to be a spot starter. If you drafted him in the 5th round, or I doubt any sooner, but
Mhm.
5th to 7th rounds, you're probably hurting right now at that RB2
Yep.
spot, unless you did something from the waiver wire earlier, like A-Chan or something like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have Madison, and little concern. Akers looked pretty good in his little touches, but yeah,
Akers, he had. Sorry about that. I should have said he had 3 fantasy points,
he just looked good running the ball, and in his role. You know what I'm saying? He looked good.
but they
Eh,
only had 13 rushing attempts between him and Madison. 13. That's it. And Ty Chandler had 1.
Yeah. Now, like before we went on air today, we were kind of talking about this game a little bit, and I mentioned, do you think the Vikings are really tanking, like trying to be sly? 13 rushing attempts. I mean, what's going on when you only have 13 rushing? You're not establishing the run at all. And I know that that might sound a little crazy, but we all know that they're not going to sign Kirk Cousins to some long extension. They're not going to re-sign him to some long extension. They need a quarterback. You have a couple quarterbacks out there in Caleb Williams and Shador Sanders.
Drake May from North Carolina.
Yep, May from North Carolina. So there's quarterbacks coming out this draft. Um, the Vikings are 1-4. Where do you go from here? Either you
I mean, get somebody for him.
yeah, like trade Kirk Cousins. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, get something for him. Why are you going to let him go if you know you're not going to sign him? And let's say they go 1-5 this week. And I don't think so. They're playing Chicago, but I will get that this week. But if you're 1-6, 1-7, get something for him because, like you said, they're not signing him. So why are you going to just let him walk?
Yeah.
I'm going to do the whole Shohei Ohtani thing for baseball. They should have traded him. But guess what? They're going to let a guy walk that could have just redid your whole team.
All right. The next game is Indianapolis and Tennessee, 16-23. The Colts win. We had the Colts in this game. We thought that they would come away with the victory, and it was a good game. The big story was Jonathan Taylor, and but the bigger story is Anthony Richardson. Man, Anthony Richardson gets hurt. You read something today saying 4 to 6 weeks. That's huge. That's huge, and I feel bad for the guy because that injury wasn't even on like a reckless type of a run. A couple of times I seen right before that happened, he had slid down. And you could tell this kid's learning. Okay, I got to get down. I'm not going to try and run guys over anymore. I learned my lesson. And then he gets
Easy.
hurt on some freak tackle, and he messes up his shoulder. That's going to be huge going forward. You and I talked about Gardner Minshew before. I said that he's probably the best backup right now that I could think of to just come in and help a team, and you don't lose a ton as far as his football IQ and all that. I like Gardner Minshew in his role, especially with the weapons. That team is really loaded, bro. And now Taylor comes back. He only gets a few yards. They use him kind of sparingly, but man, Zach Moss was just like, "Look, I'm not going nowhere. You keep feeding me the rock." Now I know that Zach Moss is going to lose time. I know as good as he's been, but I think that the Colts could use more of a timeshare with this. They can have let Taylor kind of ease his way back to the into that offense, and they'll have a man, a two-headed monster back there. And on the other side with Tennessee, Derrick Henry looks like the Derrick Henry we've been knowing recently, 43 yards, 13 carries.
Mhm.
D-Hop had a big day. Finally, 8 receptions, 140 yards. That's great. We thought D-Hop was going to have a good day, and he did. And Tannehill, it was Tannehill, just kind of bland. But what do you think about that game, man?
Yeah, it kind of went the way I thought. Not with Richardson going out, but the Colts still won that game. Tannehill had a low game. I thought he was going to find like their star receiver and do good. The star receivers against the Colts right now have been getting really big points, and that's why we talked about D Hop. And D Hop had 25 fantasy points. So the Colts are struggling against number one receivers right now. So whoever just check and see. When you guys play the Colts coming up, see who you have and play them against that defense because they've been really letting some big games get away. Spears had 16 points. Tannehill 10. Quarterback position wasn't too much for the Colts. We know we've seen they got hurt. So Minshew 6. Zach Moss had 23 carries, 36 fantasy points. Jonathan Taylor had 6 carries for 4 fantasy points. We knew that. We knew he was going to be in a pitch count with Taylor. So Josh Downs had 15 fantasy points. Michael Pittman Jr., I thought he was going to have a little bit of a better game. I think we all did.
Yeah.
He had 10. And then Drew Ogletree for tight end, 3. Going forward with Minshew, Taylor's going to get the ball, and I see Michael Pittman Jr. He's going to start getting it with Minshew for sure. But with Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry, he's in every other game right now. So I'll be aware with Henry right now. I wouldn't put too much stock in him.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost matchup based.
Yep,
Really do your homework on what
exactly.
defense he's running against, and then you can run him out there or not. Yeah, I agree. Um, Minshew, yeah, you're right. I think Pittman Jr. will get more
Mhm.
because Minshew's more of a straight up passing quarterback. But Downs has been a nice surprise for them this year, man. He really has. And he's done a good job. He's established himself firmly as the number 2 guy there. And where the hell's Alec Pierce, bro? I mean, seriously, they were talking about rookie of the year last year and they're evaluating him. This guy could be rookie of the year. I was high on Alec Pierce last year. So I'm kind of surprised that he's not good. At least so far. All right. New Orleans and New England. Man, Belichick gets his ass kicked again 2 weeks in a row. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. In New England. Derek Carr was Derek Carr. Bland. Got the job done. Alvin Kamara, 22 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. We thought Kamara would have a good day. He had a good day. He did. 22. At least they're giving him the ball. 22 carries. It's that's a good thing. And Michael Thomas had 4 receptions for 46 yards. Now, you know, Alvin Kamara had 3 receptions on 17 yards, but the
Yeah,
22 carries is the thing, man. And I thought they'd use him last time they had him 14 receptions or whatever.
14 receptions to 3. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, they really flipped the script on that. Um, once again, they bring in Bailey Zappi at the end of the game. Mac Jones just is not good. Let's just face it. He's not good. And Belichick may have lost a step as far as he's not. It doesn't seem like his team is in tune with him anymore. And I don't know how much longer we'll be seeing him. But that game was kind of a train wreck. The defense for New Orleans just went crazy and feasted. So my whole take from that, before we get into the fantasy points, and I'll get this going quickly, is that whenever you're going to stream a defense this season, you got to see who New England's playing and just run that defense out there because they're a turnover machine, unless Bailey Zappi, who I think is better than Mac Jones personally, from when I saw his sample size last year, they turn the ball over way too much, and defenses feast on this team. 2 weeks in a row, they feasted.
Saints scored 24 fantasy points, 2 sacks, 2 picks, fumble recovery, 1 touchdown. Saints didn't look too sexy on the offense side either, though. It's just it was a weird game. It was just like defense, and just embarrassing New England, really bad. Derek Carr is nothing. I don't know. He's just doing a little bit. 15 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara had a good game, 18 fantasy points. Uh, Kendre Miller, 13 fantasy points. He had some receptions also, some good yardage on the reception side. Michael Thomas, he led the receivers with 10. Chris Olave, he had a touchdown, but he had 9 fantasy points. Foster Moreau had 1 touchdown, and he had 7 fantasy points. On the New England side is really bad. Mac Jones, 1 fantasy point. Ezekiel Elliott is leading the running backs again with 7. Ramondre Stevenson, he's another guy. Don't put him in until you see something. I mean, he was a third-round pick.
You called that in our preview.
Yep, and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it until he does something. I mean, he was a third, fourth-round pick, you guys.
Yeah.
And 2 fantasy points. Kendrick Bourne, 6. Devontae Parker, 4. Juju, he's still wearing a Chiefs jersey somewhere. 3 fantasy points. I mean, shoot, he's still wearing Pittsburgh Steelers jersey somewhere. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
He's wearing a USC jersey, man.
Yeah, he's still. I don't know what happened to
He's
that
still
guy.
in college.
I don't know what happened to Juju. And then Mike Gesicki led the tight ends, and like Lonnie said, like about 3 weeks ago, everybody was Hunter Henry, and we were right. Hunter Henry, 0.
Yeah.
0 fantasy points. And Mac Jones is like, why won't you put Bailey Zappi in? What is the problem? Mac Jones looks lost. He's like spinning in circles. He's getting the ball back, and he doesn't know that where his running back's at. Like, why even keep him in? And Bill's saying, why are you even taking him out? Let him stay. Because you're up by 34. He sucks, man. Put Bailey Zappi in and see what you have. That guy is awful. That guy is awful. Awful. New England, and I know you guys are, I don't know, it's pretty bad. That's all I got.
Yeah. New England's in a bad state. They're in a bad, bad state. You can't trust anyone on their team fantasy-wise. And on the flip side, you really can't trust anyone on New Orleans fantasy-wise. Olave, you got to have him out there. He did good. He got him a touchdown yesterday. But other than that, other than Olave and Kamara, for your RB3 or
Kamara's
flex,
starting to,
for sure, Kamara.
I'm just surprised that Kamara's receiving went from 13 to 3. That's just crazy. His reception.
Maybe maybe Allen, Dennis Allen is really going
shuffling.
Yeah, and trying to adjust to the defense he's playing against. Maybe they were susceptible to the backs out of the backfield. I don't know. Our next game. Now, this game is a disappointment to me. Well, it's what I expected, but it kind of pisses me off because the way I played my FanDuel this weekend, the way we played our FanDuel this weekend, we didn't win, and a lot of it had to do with this game. Steelers, Ravens. It's never a high-scoring game. What the hell am I picking Lamar Jackson for if it's never a high-scoring game? I should have known better. We should have known better. But we went with Lamar. Lamar he's not a trustworthy fantasy play QB1 this year. If you drafted Lamar in the 3rd round, I saw him go in the 3rd or 2nd round in one of my drafts. I'm thinking, this is, man, Lamar. I saw him go before someone picked him up in 1 before Hurts. I thought, really, you get Lamar before Hurts? That's kind of weird. But anyway, so Lamar, you just have to go up and down with this guy. The receivers in Baltimore can't catch. They had so many drop passes. I mean, Zay Flowers is a young rookie, so I'll cut him a little slack. But he had a drop ball that he should have brought in. But other than that, he looked good. But Bateman looks like trash, bro. I mean, he dropped a for sure touchdown. I mean, just all kinds of things. Beckham is always hurt. 2 plays in the game, you see him on the sideline limping off. It's the same thing. Odell Beckham's done. And then the interception that Lamar throws in the end zone, The old Odell would have made a play on the ball. This Odell didn't even know what the hell was going on, and the defender picks the ball off like it was nothing. Really, not a good game. And on the other side, Pittsburgh doesn't impress me either, not one bit, anywhere. What did impress me though, Kenny Pickett and George Pickens finally connecting and having a good fantasy day. I was excited because I think George Pickens is a phenomenal talent. I think he can be a real top 5 type of wide receiver if Pickett and him could really get something going. What was your take on this game?
Yeah, he's having a rough time. We've talked about it, and you've heard me say it. I'm having a hard time with Lamar right now, trusting him. He had 11 fantasy points, but his running backs let him down. His receivers let him down. Everybody let him down. Justice Hill, he did all right. He had 13 fantasy points, but his receivers are awful. Zay Flowers dropped 2 right in the hands. Everybody did. Everybody did. Zay Flowers 12 fantasy points. Nelson Aguilar 10. Mark Andrews had 12. He's pretty sure thing. To Mark Andrews sure thing. He had 6 receptions out of 10 targets. So he's pretty sure. George Pickens, we've been talking about George Pickens. Like, let him get the chance. Keep giving him the ball. Keep giving him target. He had 10 targets. He had 29 fantasy points yesterday. Najee Harris, he's ice cold again. And Jalen Warren, he had 5 less attempts, and he had more yards than Najee. He had 10 fantasy points. Kenny Pickett had 12. And Connor Hayward, he's in for Fairmouth for tight end wise. He had 5. Yeah, this game was kind of embarrassing for Baltimore.
Right?
The first quarter, I thought Baltimore was going to walk, but their receivers look like they're not even trying, just dropping easy balls, man. And yeah, I agree with you about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh don't look good. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a team, playing a team that just looked like shit. I mean, like right now, Baltimore looks like pretenders.
Yeah, here's a funny thing. That whole North is wide open. I mean, we were worried about Cincinnati's slow start. It looks like they're going to probably come out of that division with the crown again because that whole division, once again, is just wide open. And we thought the Browns going into it was going to be the team, but anyone can win that division now. Yeah. All right. Houston and Atlanta, kind of an entertaining game, man. It went down to the wire, kind of back and forth. Both of these young quarterbacks drove their team down to what appeared could have been a game-winning drive. CJ Stroud, he got his team down there at the end. They got the go-ahead score to give his team the lead. It was 19-18. And then Ritter turns around, drives his team down. They kick the field goal and they win it, 21 to 19. Very entertaining game. Stroud had kind of a down game for himself, though, as far as his yards were concerned and his completion percentage. He didn't look so great. Once again, Damian Pierce, 20 carries, 66 yards. I thought he was going to have a bigger game. We had talked about it, and we had him also in our fan duel. And he did not have a good game. What I took out of it and what you and I had discussed is Atlanta's defense is probably better than I'm giving them credit for, especially against the run. They're pretty stout. And on Atlanta's side, it was good to see 7 receptions out of Kyle Pitts. It was good to see Drake London get 6 receptions for 78 yards. And Jonnu Smith, I don't care if Jonnu gets love, but just make sure Kyle Pitts gets it too. If they're going to use it like that, where they have Pitts, London, and Smith, and then you sprinkle in some Hollins in there, hey, that's a good formula. Yeah, give them all some love. 6, 7, 6, receptions on 11 targets for Kyle Pitts. That's how if you want him to be who he is, give him the ball 11 times, 8 to 11 targets is great. Same with Drake London. And then Smith should get about 6, targets or so. But yeah, and Bijan, he had a touchdown, but not a rushing touchdown. A nice little catch, that one-handed behind the back thing.
Yeah, behind the back, little basketball move.
Little shovel. Yeah. So yep, but he got out carried, man, by Algier. And one thing Arthur Smith said, we need to get Algier involved more, and they did, but he had less yards, 17 for 40, and Bijan was 14 for 46. Hey, Atlanta's 3-2. I found out something the other day, yesterday. Ritter has never lost a home game in his career, in high school, college. so far now in the pros. Now that we all know that's going to end in the pros, it'll end this year in the pros. But that's pretty cool, man. That's a pretty cool stat. And Ritter looked really good. I think it's probably his best day as a pro. 329 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, 111 quarterback rating. Drake London even threw a pass in this game and completed it. So what's your take on the game?
Yeah, CJ Stroud, he didn't look as good as he did this week, and just like you said, Atlanta's defense is a little tougher than we thought. Stroud had 14 fancy points. Damian Pierce he's going to be that guy. Just like I said it again, I'm going to say it again right now. Don't start him until he does something, because he's going on the bench in my league. It's just nothing there right now. We keep wanting hope, but nothing there. 9 fantasy points. Tank Dell, slow day, 8 points. Nico Collins, it seems like he's the every other week right now also, And it seems like these guys are matchup base, just check and see who they're playing. They're pretty much matchup base. So he had a slow day. Robert Woods, 6 fantasy points, and Dalton Schultz had a good game, 19 fantasy points. The Falcons, it's the best game of the year for Desmond Ridder. Arthur Smith finally used him against a defense that we thought that was going to be tough this week.
Yeah.
And their defense, broke. Houston Texans defense broke this week. So Desmond Ridder, 29 fantasy points.
Yeah.
That would have won you if you would have took a chance on that guy.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was $4,900
On DraftKings.
On DraftKings,
Yeah.
$4,900.
Yeah.
Bijan, 12. Algier, 6. Drake London, 14. Kyle Pitts, finally, 15. And Jonnu Smith, 11. So out of the tight ends, 18 targets for the 2 tight ends. So they're going for the tight ends.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't think we thought like Atlanta was going to get killed or lose bad. But just the way Houston's offense been and their defense been, we picked Houston to win. But, hey, man, Atlanta deserved that game. They played tough.
They did. They look good, man. And I guess the moral of the story here is when coaches are bad, they must really listen to our podcast, because everything we say they need to do, the next week they do it, right? Eberflus and Luke Getzky, they took care of their stuff on Thursday night. And then here we go. We were just saying, hey, I said last week, hey, Arthur Smith's about to be in one of my rant videos because he's not getting the ball to his stars and I don't know. And then he goes out and does it, and it's a winning formula. So I don't know. Maybe we're just a little smarter than those coaches, or maybe I'm full of myself. So that's probably what it really is. I'm just full of myself.
Phase Fantasy Live. just Phase Fantasy Live. Instagram, TikTok,
YouTube,
X,
right?
YouTube.
We're all here. Just
Facebook one day, but just keep hitting it.
Exactly. All right. So the next game, we thought this game would go about this way, and it did. The Lions, the Panthers. The Lions did what I thought they should do, even without Amon-Ra St. Brown. They spread it around enough. What they did is what they've shown us they're going to do. They fed the big guy the rock, and he just ran with it. Another 100-yard day for David Montgomery, 19 carries, 109 yards. He had a 42-yard touchdown. He just got loose. This guy gets loose, bro. David Montgomery's looking like he did when he first broke into the league, and everyone was all excited about him. He's looking good. And that number 5 makes him look a little quicker, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and Jared Goff had a serviceable day, only 236 yards passing, but he still had 3 touchdowns, and he used his big tight end, Laporta. This offense is built around wide receivers and tight ends. So if you don't have your key wide receivers, that tight end is so ingrained in that offense, and that running game is so ingrained how they use it, that if they miss a key component like a Amon-Ra St. Brown, they can still function very well, especially at home. And that defense is dirty. I mentioned Aiden Hutchinson. This dude's a beast, bro. And he goes ahead and he gets that pick, and he just makes it life very, very difficult for opposing quarterbacks. On the other side of the ball, Bryce Young looked young. He looked like a young quarterback. He had three touchdowns with 2 picks. Chuba Hubbard led the backfield with 9 carries and 36 yards. But there's really nothing to tell there other than Adam Thielen having another big game, 13 targets, 11 receptions, 107 yards. Adam Thielen looks like he's really established himself there back, But what was your take from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, Bryce Young, you can see a big struggle there with him, He's struggling, but he still had a big fantasy day, 20 points, not bad, but he had 2 picks. He's he's finding, he finally found somebody, he found a Thielen to keep him comfortable. And he's going, 13 targets. Thielen had 30 fantasy points, and that's somebody to keep on going. If you have him, keep starting him, and then on your daily fantasy, put him in your lineup, matchup base. You don't want the Panthers to go against somebody really tough and pick them, but they're a running game struggling. And if you think about it, like if they just had a running game, they would probably be a little bit better. It would help out Bryce Young a lot. Like a Bryce Young slung the rock 41 times. That's a lot, And Chuba Hubbard 4 points, Miles Sanders 2, and it's like they got to get a running game going. DJ Chark had 13 fantasy points, Jonathan Mingo 9, and Tommy Tremble 7. Hayden Hurst nowhere to be found. He had 5. He's not being used the way they promised.
No, not at all.
Jared Goff 27 fantasy points. David Montgomery, keep rolling with them. Don't stop. 23. Craig Reynolds had a touchdown. He had 11 in garbage time. And that just means Gibbs. I would hold Gibbs out of your lineup right now.
Yeah.
I would not start Gibbs right now. And it's tough because I have him in every league. And, like Gibbs, I would sit out until just see what happens,
Till they
Just see what
start
happens.
using them.
Yeah, until they start using him, like I'm kind of shocked to see him just keep running Montgomery the way they are because he's got hurt the last 3 years with Chicago. He always gets hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that they're using him that much. And Josh Reynolds, we thought he'd have a big game, 17 points with a Brown out, and then Laporta 19 fantasy points.
Yeah, they're establishing themselves as a real force in the NFC. I like what they're doing on both sides of the ball. They have some players, and I like Detroit right now. I really do. I just like that team.
Yeah, me too.
And I know they're in the North Division with the Vikings, but I do like that team. All right, that kind of segues us into because we're talking about. You were just talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, and they're not using him, and they don't use Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe they're slow with their rookies or something like that. Some teams really are, man. They take more time with rookies. It's like Jameson Williams got his first playing time. He didn't play much and wasn't, they try to get him the ball a few times or whatever. But the Dolphins and the Giants, a total contrast to the way Mike McDaniel's using his rookies. Because Devin Achane is rolling, and I don't give a damn what you hear out there. This guy's got to be in your starting lineup every freaking week. You got to start him until he proves that he can't be started. Because the way they use this kid is they get him the ball in his strengths. And his strength is quickness and speed. This dude is fast. And he broke off another one, a 76-yard touchdown. And he's a hitter, just like you said last week. He broke off an 80. This week he breaks off 76. He's got that home run ability. And even if you throw him in your flex, because you don't trust him in one of those RB slots, so it makes a difference, in your mind. Even if you throw him in, because I have him in my flex in one league. Like, I don't want to put him as my top 2 running backs. Like, that makes a difference, in my mentality. But even if you throw him in there, they're proving that they're going to use this kid and get him the rock. He had 11 carries, 151 yards. 11 carries, 151 yards. Once again, he's just blowing it out the water. Raheem Mostert, 10 carries, 65 yards, which is not bad. 10 for 65. That's 6.5 yards a carry. Achane's is 13.7 average. I mean, these two dudes are crazy right now. That backfield is ridiculous. If you have either one of them, you could play either one of them. Just play them. Screw it. They're both like RB2 flex, kind of material right now. And Achane is actually putting up RB1 numbers. But yeah, Tua had just a regular game. He had 300 yards passing though. Not bad.
2 picks.
Tua. Yeah. And the pick six, the 102-yard pick six was
Mhm.
kinda crazy, but that wasn't Tua's fault. I think that bounced off of someone's hands or
Mhm.
it was tipped or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, and Tyreek, another big game. Tyreek and Achan, bro, they look like little mirrors. It looks like Achan loves Tyreek and tries to run like him and look like him. But it's funny because Tyreek was running and should have had a touchdown, and Achan could have got a block for him, but he couldn't
Yeah.
pass up Tyreek to get the block
Yeah.
because Tyreek's still faster. But it was an entertaining game to watch. You know, Tyreek 181 yards. He wants 2,000 yards receiving. He keeps doing this. He's going to get there this year. 8 receptions on 9 targets. Yeah, just incredible once again. And Waddle, we thought Waddle would have a big game. He didn't have a big game, but he had a good game. You know, he got in the end zone. Um, I don't know, man. Maybe there's just too many weapons over there on Miami side. Maybe with Achan now and Moats are doing good. Maybe, you know, a lot if you get a lot of these home runs like they're getting, it takes away some plays like from Waddle or whatever,
Right,
you know.
right.
So, and on the other side, they're just a bad team. You know, the Giants are just bad. There's not much to say about them. Daniel Jones is not very good. They don't have a running game without Barkley, and they have no receivers. Period. And Waller led them in receiving, which he probably should have because he's their best receiver. What was your take on it?
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats, the fantasy points for the Giants, and you know what? They don't have nobody on that team that even looks good. Darren Waller. I mean, you're looking at the team and you're like, really? Like, you really did not try to go shore up your receiving core. I know we talked about it last week. I'm not going to get involved. I mean, go too much on it, but it's just crazy. Like, I'm looking at a team. It's awful, awful. Daniel Jones, 7 fantasy points. Eric Gray led the running backs, 3. Matt Breida, I thought he would have did something. I actually said something when we are doing our DFS. I just thought maybe he would do something against Miami defense. They're not too strong. Nothing. Wandale Robinson, 6. Darren Waller, 16. Tua, Achan, Tyreek Hill, 80 points. If you would have stacked them, you would have got 80 points.
Hey, quick note.
Stack
What
them.
did we say? We said if you're
Mhm.
doing a FanDuel or DraftKings, if you start your stack off with Tua, and we said
Waddle. We said Waddle.
Waddle
Yep.
and Achan, if you start your team with those 3, that's a good foundation to build your and that
Mhm.
wasn't a lie. I mean, I know Tyreek had the bigger game, but those 3 alone, you put those 3 together to start your team, you're gonna have a good chance of winning some
Yeah.
money in your tournaments if you did that. So I hope you guys did that because you would have won something.
Yeah, we had a big feeling about it. Yep. Yeah, because we just knew, like, right when we started looking at it, we
Yep.
knew those 3 guys. And even Hill, Hill was like 95, 9,000 on FanDuel. He
Yeah.
was more. So Tua, 21 fantasy points. Achan, 25. Mostert pitched in with 15. Tyreek Hill, 35. Waddle, 14. Nothing from the
Yeah.
tight ends. The Dolphins dominated that game, and that's what we thought. And moving forward, Tua, Achan, Mostert, Hill, and Waddle. If you have them on the team, start them. On the Giants side,
Right.
don't start nobody other than Barkley if Barkley comes back. That's pretty much it.
That is it. And if Waller's the only tight end you have, then you can play him. If he scores a touchdown, you're going to be okay, but he'll get you some tight end points because he's the only guy catching passes over there.
Yeah, that's true. Waller, if you have Waller, play Waller.
Yeah. Next game, Bengals Cardinals. It was a better game than I thought. It looked like the Cardinals were going to be feisty for a minute, like they always do.
Yeah. Yeah, for
But
a minute.
but
And then,
bro, this is what the world in Cincinnati, this is what the Bengals fans have been waiting for. This is what we all when we're talking about fantasy football and all this. I have me some Jamar Chase. I picked him up third in the draft. He finally looked like the Jamar Chase that I was hoping to get. And that's because Joe Burrow finally looked good. Joe, 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And when Jamar says, I'm always effing open, then Joe's like, okay, I'll just get you the ball next
he's
game.
always
I
effing
got you.
open.
and, he, And so
Mm-hmm.
the story was Chase and Burrow. Chase had 15 receptions on 19 targets, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 63 yarder. Just looked phenomenal. Looked like the Jamar Chase that that we
Mm-hmm.
we expect to see. T. Higgins did not play in this game, so that left the door open for Trenton Irwin and Tyler Boyd. Irwin actually outpaced Boyd. He had 10 targets for 8 receptions, 60 yards. Neither one of them got in the end zone though. And then Joe Mixon. We thought Joe Mixon would be used a lot and have a big game. He was used a lot, didn't have a big game. 25 carries, 81 yards. That's not great. Didn't get the end zone, but he established a run that really opened up that passing game for them. And Joe Burrow, like we said, so they looked good. Jamar Chase kind of broke fantasy in that second slate. And matter of fact, I'm hanging on from the skin of my life right now in our league. I'm only up by 5 points because I was going against Jamar Chase, who had 55 points in our league, and enabled that dude, Dwayne, that dude, our buddy Dwayne, to he has Dobbs tonight, and I think Dobbs will probably get more than 5 fantasy points. I'm gonna lose. And I'm losing, bro. And I don't want to get off into a big rant, but Richardson getting hurt. I had him started and I had Fields on my bench. So shame on me. I didn't see Richardson getting hurt. So that's why I'm losing. And then on the other side, Josh Dobbs, still looks decent, but he had 2 turnovers, man, 2 picks, and there's nothing really to say on the other side.
No.
There's really, I mean, today we're getting a lot of these kind of games. So what was your take?
James Conner, he went out with an injury. He had 46 yards and 6 carries, so he was doing pretty good, but he's out. Nothing really on what about him right now. The Cardinals look like a 1-4 team. I think this is the first time you could say it all year that the Cardinals did not look too well. Dobbs, he didn't
Yeah,
look too well. 2 picks, 2 bad throws. He had 11 fantasy points. Amari DeMarcado, he had 12. Connor, before he went out, he had 4. Marquise Brown, he had 10 targets. He had 16 fantasy points. Rondell Moore, 10.
4 reception.
Yeah, 4
Mhm.
receptions, 10 targets. That Dobbs
Yeah,
didn't
it's not
look
good.
good this week, man. He was really off. He was 15 to 32 for 166 yards. Dobbs looked really off, really bad.
Yeah,
And I think teams are going to start scheming for him. I think I can see Cardinals just start going down pretty bad, and especially if they lose Connor. And I don't know what's up with his injury yet, but and then Zach Ertz had 9. The Bengals, they needed this game. They needed to play the Cardinals this week, and they did. And hopefully it turns them around. Joe Burrow, 27
yeah.
fantasy points. Joe Mixon, 13. Wasn't as good as we thought he would. Jamar Chase, 55 fantasy
Mhm.
points. Trent Irwin, 14. Tyler Boyd, 9. And no points from the tight end side. Yeah, the Bengals played the way I thought they would. I thought the Bengals were going to come in and finally do something. And the Cardinals, they're starting to look like a team that we all thought this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of what we thought. It's good to see the Bengals starting to get on track because I think the NFL's better when those guys are flying. When they're doing well,
Hmm.
it's fun to talk about the Bengals because they have a bunch of really, really
Hmm.
good young players on that team. Okay, so the next game up is another game where a highly anticipated return, Eagles, Rams. Cooper Cup was a story. Cooper Cup came back, bro, and looked like Cooper Cup. No, I mean, I didn't see anything that made me think, oh,
Hmm.
I'm worried he's going to get hurt. He looks hurt. He looked like Cooper Cup, bro. He's out there just getting it done. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 118 yards. Only thing he didn't do was get in the end zone. And then the big question was, oh, what's going to happen to Puka Nakua? You know what's going to happen to Puka Nakua? Nothing. I mean, he's not going to get 20 targets, but he still got 11 targets, 7 receptions, 71 yards, got a touchdown, 22-yard long. They're going to work really well together with Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is an old crafty vet, man, and he can get the ball to his talented players. He definitely can. And even Atwell, he's going to suffer the most. He had 5 targets on 2 receptions. But Matt Stafford knows how to use 2 really good receivers and get them the rock. And these guys get open. So I thought Cup looked great, man. I thought it looked great, and I'm looking forward to him having a good season as long as he stays healthy. It's going to change this Rams offense, and it's going to make the Rams a lot more dangerous moving forward. It's going to give Matt Stafford even some spot start ability, here or there, some streaming ability.
Hmm.
Kieran Williams had an off game, 13 carries, 53 yards, didn't find the end zone. He is really touchdown dependent. All his games this year, he's gotten in the end zone basically, and that's what really gets his fantasy. That's what drives his fantasy value. He's going to be a touchdown dependent type of a running back. But, and then on the other side, those Eagles, Jalen Hurts didn't look great in this win, but he had a rushing touchdown. He had a passing touchdown. He had 303 yards, which, for me, saying he didn't look great. But his quarterback rating was 87.9. He had a touchdown and an interception. He didn't look great, but once again, these guys just get it done. They're 5-0. Swift was 17 for 70. Hurts ran 15 times though for 72 yards. Fantasy gold. That's why if you drafted Jalen Hurts in the second or the third round, this is why, because he's going to pass and he's going to run it. And that's what you want. AJ Brown starting to look really good. He's just really good. 127 yards. Dallas Goddard finally got going. You've been saying Dallas Goddard, they got to get Goddard going. Well, they got him going. 8 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. All you Dallas Goddard owners out there are probably pleased about that. Hopefully, he can keep up some of that. We've seen that they don't use him a ton, but when they do, when he has his games, they got Swift involved, man, in the passing game. 6 targets, 6 receptions, 38 yards. It's not bad. And Devonta had a real quiet game. I guess when Goddard goes off, Devonta doesn't do anything. What was your take on the game, bro?
Well, they kept the targets between the Cup and Nakua pretty close, so they wanted to keep Nakua in the game, and they were playing a tough team. Williams, he had a tough time on the ground with the Philly defense. He had 7 fantasy points. Matthew Stafford had 16. Cooper Cup 22. Nakua 20. Tutu Atwell with Cup coming back. He had a down game. He had 8 fantasy points. The one that had the most down game is Higbee. He was getting like 8, 9 targets a game. He only had 3. He had 4 fantasy points. So they're going to have to figure it out. With Cooper Cup back, but I mean, a Cup and Nakua look good. I mean, there's no issues there. I mean, they both had a bunch of targets and all that. That
Yeah.
game was a tough game early on. Eagles were they weren't running away with anything till the fourth quarter. So, but Hurts went off. He had 31 fantasy points. DeAndre Swift, he had all right
Mhm.
game, 16 fantasy points. Gainwell, nothing, 3. AJ Brown, another big game, 21. And Devontae Smith, he hasn't been looking. He hasn't been getting too many fantasy points lately. The last 2 games has been really low, and he hasn't been getting his stats haven't been that great lately. And I don't know,
Yeah.
but they got Dallas Goddard in 28 fantasy points. I've been hoping for that. I put him in a DFS league this week. I just had a feeling, and he had 9 targets. But moving forward on the Philly side, Goddard, Brown, Swift, and Hurts. Devontae Smith. Yeah. I mean, you still got to start him. If he's on your team, you got
Yeah.
to start him. I have him, and I have to start him. But lately, he's been let down.
Yeah. I think they'll balance that out a little bit, don't you? Yeah, moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah. I think
I
so.
think Serrani will figure that out and get
Yeah,
those guys all get him because he's got a lot of weapons over there. He's got a lot of mouths to feed
a lot.
in that, especially with Swift becoming a solid RB for them
Hmm.
because they've always had this committee that didn't really work. You know what I mean? So if they
Yep.
always lead the league in rushing, that's because their quarterback runs. So
Yep.
anyway, yeah, it ended the way we thought. We both had Philly, and they're 5-0, one of 2 undefeated teams. Kind of looks like a mirror of last year a little bit. Um, you know, so let's get on to the next game. This game was a pretty cool game because there was a lot of bullshit that was said in the off season. And when you talk that kind of mess, you better be ready to back that stuff up because it's just Sean Payton. So we'll get into it. The New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. And it's kind of like Sean Payton had to. eat some crow
Mhm.
because he talked a lot of trash, and he was saying that Nathaniel Hackett, that was the worst coaching job he'd ever seen in the history of the NFL or something like that. And the Jets, they took that personal and they made it, locker room material. And they came out and they won. But it was a close game, man. It wasn't like the Jets just went in there and whooped Sean Payton. Sean Payton put up a fight and his Broncos put up a fight. But the Jets get a win. Zach Wilson, his numbers aren't great in this game, but the eye test, as you watch the game, he had an interception that was not his fault at all. That he put the ball where it needed to be. Garrett Wilson needed to catch that ball.
No.
It was down low. It was where it was a safe spot where only Wilson should have been able to catch it, but he let the guy get it from him, and it wasn't Zach's fault. Did not look bad in that game. And when you put that the way he played with Brees Hall, give him the rock, 177 yards, you know, 8 yards a carry, a 72-yard touchdown. He's another home run hitter. You do that with Zach Wilson, and then you have Garrett Wilson, Lazard catching the ball. All he has to do is manage it, man. And you put that with that tough defense. The defense, are you surprised a little bit? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but are you surprised that this defense doesn't look as nasty as we thought it was going to look when the season started?
Yeah. Yeah, I know we talked about it last week. I am. I mean, they scored 18 fantasy points. They had 4 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries. But yeah, it doesn't look as nasty. No, you're right. I mean, to give up 21 points, it doesn't look as nasty. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
And then Russell Wilson, like he's looked all year, he's looked okay. He hasn't looked bad, man. Two touchdowns, no interceptions. Jaleel McLaughlin is I'm thinking, okay, if Javonte Williams misses more time, you can really run Jaleel McLaughlin out there. His two appearances have been good, and he has this knack for the end zone. Is this knack for getting 9 carries, 68 yards? That's still 7.6 yard per carry average. That's good. And he had that one receiving touchdown that was kind of a cool little. He tipped it and grabbed it and went into the end zone with it. But Jaleel McLaughlin's looking like if you picked him up on waivers, you got no one else, you can at least throw him out there and if they use him, I think he'll be all right for you. Mims Jr. Had a bad game for himself. Judy hasn't looked great this year. He just hasn't. So Cortland Sutton hasn't looked good. One catch for 13 yards. So I don't know. I wasn't surprised with this game. We said New York would get the win, and they got the win. What was your take on it?
Yeah, Denver's offense been looking the same to me for the past couple of weeks with Russell Wilson. He's been getting done. He only had 196 yards, but he had 19 fantasy points. He's been averaging almost 20 every game. You know, and McLaughlin, he actually had a better game than William has all year. Like he's been like Williams hasn't had an over 60-yard rushing game yet. I don't think maybe right there, but he had 17 fantasy points. Perrine had 12. Judy, a low game. Their whole receiving core had a bad game, had 11, and nobody else scored more than 3. Trotman had 12. Um, yeah, McLaughlin, I would keep playing him. And I would keep playing Russell Wilson too. He's like I said, he's averaging over 20 every game. He has not did less. I mean, there's 19 this week, but he's been at 20 every week. Um, and McLaughlin, they might even play him more than Williams, even if when Williams comes back. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Zach Wilson, he looked a lot better than the score was. He had 9 fantasy points. Brees Hall, Salah said it, no pitch count, 31 fantasy points. Brees Hall
Yeah.
said, "Give me the ball," and give him the ball.
Yep.
Garrett Wilson, 8 fantasy points. Lazard, 6, and Tyler Conklin, 10. Moving forward, you still got to play Wilson. You still got to start with Hall.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson, don't
Mhm.
nothing yet. And then tight end wise, Conklin has been doing all right lately. Has been too bad. That's more like DFS Conklin. He was 3,200 on DraftKings, but he hasn't been doing too bad. He had
Yeah.
5 targets. But, yeah, that game went the way we went or that we thought. And, yeah, you're right, Jets defense does not look as solid as we thought they would. Not like Dallas' defense a couple times this year and like the Niners' defense and even Philly's defense is pretty
Yeah.
solid up front. You know, Jets defense has been giving up some big plays, so,
Yep.
you know.
No, I agree, man. Kind of went the way we thought it would go. For a minute there, I thought that Sean Payton would just like say, "No, I said what I said. Now get the hell out of my house." But no, he had to eat some crow, and it's good for Nathaniel Hackett, man. He had a rough time last year. It's good to see that he's really helping that offense. One thing before we get on to the next game and the last game of the day, Zach Wilson said that for the first time, he felt like a coach really had his back and believed in him for the first time in his career. That's kind of surprises me. It's like, man, you've been playing football probably since you're a kid, and this is the first time you felt a coach really had your back. Have you been like fighting uphill the whole way to get here, or what? How did you get on the Jets if But I think if Zach Wilson feels like someone's got his corner for the first time, we're probably going to see it on the field, man. We said it the other, what was a couple of casts ago. I said, "Hey, just be patient with this guy. Just give him some time. Stop comparing him to freaking Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest who ever played the game. You can't compare this kid to Rodgers. I mean, just let him learn how to play." And I think if they do that, he'll be all right, man. They won't have to go out and get someone else. Use your defense and your running game to get you to the playoffs and deep if you can. Focus on that. All right. Last game on the slate. So we talked about you having a conversation with a friend of ours. I'm gonna call him out, Ray. Our boy Ray. We love us some Ray. He's a great guy, funny guy. And Ray had a question, and he thought that the Dallas Cowboys, if they put pressure on Brock Purdy and they hit him, that they would get him off his game and he would kind of shrink back. It's kind of what Ray was alluding to. And then you went ballistic. And I laughed a lot because of your reaction. It was kind of comical. And then I entered my opinion and I said, "No, Purdy's gonna be fine, bro. I don't think he's gonna be scared of getting hit a
Right,
few
right.
times." And so the Cowboys and the 49ers. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. The Cowboys are the internet bully. They pick on the little guy and they beat him. They beat the guy that's inferior to them, and they beat him up, and they talk a big game, and they come swagging into town like they're big and bad, and they're internet tough guys. That's who the Cowboys are. They're not real. They're plastic. They're fake. And when they met a team that was real, and I'm not a Niner fan. You know that I'm not a Niner fan, but I'm not anti-Niner, but I grew up in the Bay Area. So the Niner fans aren't my favorite people in the world because they can be some obnoxious SOBs. Bro, they really can.
I'm sorry. I was just listening to some Pretenders, you know what I mean? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry right now, you guys. Sorry. Sorry. That that came up on my
You
phone real
know,
quick.
if
Sorry
a
about that.
oh, it's just crazy how
Yeah, I
that
don't know.
happens,
It just
right? And
man, it came from somewhere. I don't know. Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Lonnie.
if Fox and all these media wants to put the big crown on these Cowboys and say the number one team is rolling into town, and they can do whatever the hell they want, but we saw who the Cowboys were last night. The Niners beat the hell out of them. Like the Niners were taking this personal. And it's crazy because Brock Purdy, we talked about Brock Purdy after week 2, I think. If we go back into our archives and check out some of our shows, we talked about Brock Purdy. And I made an analogy that my boy said, we thought he was like, he can be like, have a Drew Brees type
Mhm.
career. He kind of reminds us of a Drew Brees. Bro, there's nothing that's changed that to me. It's just reinforcing it. This kid is good. 17 to 24, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Cool as the other side of the pillow, as my boy Stuart Scott used to say, God rest his soul.
God rest his soul.
You know, yep. Hey, so This Brock Purdy, man, he's the real deal. He really is. Christian McCaffrey against a really tough defense, he had the kind of game you might have against a really tough defense. They still fed
Mhm.
him the rock 19 times, 51 yards, got in the end zone. For him, that's a subpar game, but it's a real tough run defense. Jordan Mason got a few more carries, 10 for 69. He had a good game, a good rushing game. Debo carried the ball 5 times. They even had, TDP in there. He got it for, 6 carries for 21 yards. George Kittle, all he didn't do much. He only had 3 receptions for 67 yards and, on 4 targets for 3 touchdowns. All three of
Great.
them were touchdowns, right? And then Ayuk looked good,
Oh,
but only
man.
4 receptions. It's funny
Mhm.
because you look at the stat lines for the Niners and nothing jumps out at you as if this was great other than those 3 touchdowns by Kittle, the 4 touchdowns and no interceptions by Purdy. That's what, and then they use who's check, which every now and then he'll, vulture a
You
touchdown and piss everyone off in
Mhm.
fantasy. But, and on the other side, Tony Pollard coming up against a stout defense, they only gave him the ball 8 times for 29 yards, and they only had 19 rushes total between all their, offense. Dwaddle had 5, Deuce Vaughn 3, Brandon Cooks got it one time, Dak ran it once, Cooper rushed once, and they had 57 yards rushing. And this is a guy that Pollard, you're drafting him in the first, second round this year. And the whole team got 57 yards rushing. So CeeDee Lamb, I thought should have had a better game based on what you were saying. The vulnerabilities for the Niners were propensity to give up some plays down the
Mhm.
middle of the field and give up some plays in the passing. I thought CeeDee Lamb was a little irritated with the way the game progressed. And we'll just get to Dak. Dak played a really good team and he got smacked in the face. I like Dak Prescott. Personally, I like him. I've had him on my fantasy league over the last few years. I would have him here or there. So I don't have anything against Dak like you do, but, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, a 51 quarterback rating. Dak, you got to be better than that. When you play in the playoffs, you're going to play teams like this. And if you ain't ready, yeah, you can beat the Giants up and all that stuff, and you can beat up you can't even beat the Cardinals. We should have known when they lost to the Cardinals that they're going to get there. But we called this. If you listen back, I said that as long as if the Niners don't turn it over, I could see the Niners running away with this. But it could be a tight game if the Niners don't turn it over. Though I could see them run away. You said you didn't care who won. You just want to see a good game. You cared that you want the Niners to win, obviously, but I just want to see a good game. I wanted no bullshit, no excuses. Just I want both teams to be healthy and just play. Just play. That was your take. You're trying to keep a straight of the line, non-bias, on it. But yeah, it wasn't even a game, bro. I had to turn. I started playing Call of Duty towards the third quarter, bro, because it was over. I'm like, let me just jump out some Call of Duty and just because this game is done. What was your take on it, man?
Micah. Micah, hello. Micah Parsons, are you out there, Micah? I- I'll stand by you, Micah. I'll stand by you. Micah, shut up. Everything I seen today, too, they said the same thing, but they can't say what I want to say or the way I am going to say it. Be quiet. Show up and play. And then after the game, you want to say, I don't see a difference between the teams? Really? You don't see a difference between the teams? Bro, you got smoked. And like I said, it won't be a big stat game for the Niners. It's not going to be because they're going to beat you up, and they did. You looked like, bro, you didn't look like nothing. Nothing. That Dallas defense didn't look nothing because we didn't care about the stats. And we still won 42-10. 42-10. And then where's the respect for Brock Purdy at? All the throws, perfect throws, and the scheme. And you still want to sit there after the game, Micah Parsons still want to sit there and say, we look as good as them, but we had a bad game. Really. And I've read and I looked at so much stuff this morning. I woke up 5 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to see what people said. And they're saying the same thing I am. Shut up. Play the game. What are you looking at? You know, I'm tired of all the like disrespect for the team and for everything, and just like Lonnie said, pretender. All Dallas has done is talk. Who have they beat? Really? Who have they beat? Who have they lost to? They lost to the Cardinals, and they got killed by the Niners last night. And yeah, the Niners could go against Cleveland and then lose, but guess what? I don't think the Niners care about that game. They won in last night's game, and they got last night's game, and they showed them. They they chipped Micah. They chipped everybody. Debo Samuels, like I told you, Lonnie, watch. It's going to be a George Kittle game, and Debo might not have nothing. He's going to just beat somebody up, and he did.
Yeah,
And he did.
you did.
Dak Prescott, he's scared. He's scared of the big game. His eyes wide open, didn't know what he was looking at. That boy, like deer in the headlights, like bad. Like I like Dak as a person, but if they don't do anything this year and they don't go playoffs deep or anything, there's no way Dak Prescott should be going in as a number one next year. He might be on the team, but he should be having somebody next to him fighting for that number one position because for the big games, that boy looks scared. He looks scared. Tony Pollard, 9 fantasy points. Turpin, 9. CD Lamb, I feel bad for him, man. He's a great player. 8 fantasy points, and I'm surprised they didn't. The Niners, I mean, you could just tell they wanted this game. They shut down everything. Everybody, I mean, the fire with them. Dallas had no fire. Jake Ferguson, 5 fantasy points. Brock Purdy, 26 fantasy points. And like I said, Chris McCaffrey, he didn't have a big game because they didn't need him to have a big game. They were playing physical. He had 14 fantasy points. Jordan Mason, 12. Juszczyk, 12. Debo, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 11 fantasy points. They didn't need Debo. Brandon Ayuk, 9 fantasy points. George Kittle, 27. Their defense, 16. It's the thing is, every week they keep putting the Dallas above everybody. Even when they lost against Cardinals, they still had them up there. I mean, come on, man. Now it's just like, the Niners played a tough game. They wanted that game. Dallas, they didn't. They didn't show up. And Dak Prescott, to me, he looks really bad. Really bad. I'm done.
Jake, will you tell us how you really feel? That is the truth.
That's the truth. I mean, honestly, that's the truth. If you watched stuff this morning too, if they could act like the way I acted like right now, I bet you they would. It was bad. It was bad. I'm trying not to be a homer.
Yeah, look, no homer. We're not homers here. Jake bleeds Niner red, I bleed Viking purple, but we are not homers. We will rip our team too. Just like I brought up the question, are the Vikings tanking? Because they didn't look good. They didn't look good against Mahomes. They should have looked better on their offensive side. Their defense, they give up 27 points. And Jake, you're just spitting truth. This is what people do want to hear. And yeah, Micah Parsons, where the hell were you? You had 4 tackles in the game. Micah Parsons did have 4 tackles, 1 solo tackle, no tackles for loss. And maybe I should eat a little bit of crow, and I will. I'll eat a little bit of crow on this something I said because I said on that field, the best defensive player will be Michael Parsons. And, I still think Michael Parsons is a great defensive player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the best in the whole league. And I said even better than Nick Bosa because Nick hasn't shown up yet this year. But when this game, Nick looked good. I mean, he had 4 tackles, just like Micah, but he had 2 solo tackles. He had half a sack and he had a tackle for loss, and 4 quarterback hits. Micah Parsons didn't even have a quarterback hit. I mean, come on, man. Micah, you're the catalyst for that defense there. You got to get those boys going. What that tells me is
Talking too much.
Shanahan. What that tells me is Shanahan is just a great, game planner. He planned for Micah Parsons. He was ready. Like you said, he had guys chipping him, bothering him the whole time, keeping him off his quarterback. He had quick passes in that West Coast. They talk about the Texas Coast offense. Give me a freaking break. So I was sitting down with one of my sons. I'm like, Texas Coast, what the hell is that? There's no coast in the Texas Coast offense. They got the Gulf there, I guess, maybe. But it's like, this ain't a coast. This ain't, what I'm saying? The Texas Coast offense, it's like
Chris Collinsworth, he's the only one that I've ever heard say that. Chris Collinsworth has to always say something stupid.
he's an idiot,
And the thing is, it wouldn't even be this bad. I wouldn't even be this bad, but if you keep talking, like they always talk in Dallas, so for no reason. They talked all this week. It's like for what, man? What are you talking for? And then you're talking after the game when you got your ass beat. Like, why are you talking? And like I said, hey, Nick Bosa was going to have a game to win. And like I said, I don't care about the stats. The stats could be nothing. They're going to find a way to win this game. And I didn't think it was going to be 42-10.
no,
But you know what I mean? Like you get beat this bad, there's nothing to say. There's nothing to say. You can't say anything.
nothing at all.
Just
I agree 100%. To me, the debate's over. Hey, Cowboy Nation, or is that if that's what I think is Cowboy Nation. You have nothing to say about who's the better team in the NFL, you or the Niners. We all saw it. It was proven on the field. So just zip it until they meet again. Then, and you're not even better than the Eagles. You- you're not even better than the Eagles. And the Eagles still haven't even hit their stride yet. So I don't want to hear shit. When they play the Eagles, they're going to get their butt whooped again. That's it, man. Good week. It was a good week. Key injuries. Keep an eye on Justin Jefferson. We don't know the status of him yet for next week's game, but we do know that Anthony Richardson will be out at least 4 weeks. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. That's a tough blow to Indianapolis, but they do get Taylor back. And in the returns of Taylor and Cup, Cup looked like what we thought. Taylor, I think he's going to be fine. They're just going to implement, gradually get him back into that offense. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, you got something out of the show. I am Lonnie. He is Jake, and we will catch you on the next one.